the agreement for Syria. You have a Syrian ceasefire agreement that John Kerry, our Secretary of State, and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced Friday night, September 9th, in Geneva. It says, according to this Debka article, debka.com, that the agreement essentially hands Russia's President Vladimir Putin and the country's military. So it hands Syria over to Putin. Putin wins. And they said that Obama's reluctance to go along with that plan was that it was more in accordance to Donald Trump's plan. In fact, it was Gary Johnson's plan too. He says diplomatically we need to work out some sort of agreement with Putin. That's what Gary Johnson said. If you didn't, get caught up in this sort of inside the Beltway argument. There was publication of the details would reveal that the rebels in Aleppo area, perhaps in all of Syria, have been abandoned. So essentially the ones that we were supporting, we're backing off now, and we're letting Putin and Turkey and, all the different actors to sort of take care of themselves. Trump said, let them all kill each other and just take a step back, whereas Hillary Clinton said to declare a no-fly zone and then, go in there and take it over, right? Just like we did with Iraq, just like she did in Ukraine and Libya and Honduras. Every single war Hillary Clinton has ever come across, she has been in favor of it. Now, I want to revisit this Aleppo thing because maybe Gary Johnson, Aleppo, everybody's focused on it now because he, had his gaffe, Aleppo Gate. But now there's a ceasefire. So as soon as Gary Johnson, makes a gaffe, then the situation gets solved. So maybe he should be making gaffes all over the place, and then, maybe we'll actually end the global war on terror. Maybe we'll actually end the war on drugs. Maybe we'll actually get personal freedom. Maybe that'll actually happen. So the first thing I want to mention with Aleppo Gate, Aleppo, is the New York Times. The New York Times first ran an article about what he had said, and they said that Aleppo was the capital of Syria. Well, it turns out that Raqqa in northern Syria is the capital. So apparently the New York Times didn't even really know what Aleppo was. And you're going to tell me that all you all know? It's like, wait a second. Okay, so Raqqa in northern Syria, not Aleppo, is the capital of the Islamic State. And then it said that the Syrian capital is Damascus, okay? So Damascus is the Syrian capital, and Raqqa is the de facto capital of the Islamic State. So does that disqualify the New York Times from being a newspaper? It disqualifies them. It disqualifies them. Okay, so there's that, the New York Times article. Then there's Joy Behar. I want to mention Joy Behar. And Joy Behar, she had said, I believe this was the order. So Joy Behar, she had said that if she knows about Aleppo, then clearly Gary Johnson don't know what the hell he's talking about. Because if stupid, backwards, dumb Joy Behar, if she knows something that a politician doesn't know, well, clearly they're an idiot and they don't know what the hell is going on. So I think that Joy Behar should give herself a little bit more credit. It seems like she trusts people that seems like they're smarter than her. And that I think she was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton does talk above people. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that I have with her, is that she's talking above everybody. She's all high and mighty. She knows what's going on. Nobody else knows what the hell it is, and she's just so much smarter. And so if that's what she's trying to say, is that she talks above everybody because she's so smart, I think that Joy Behar, what if I was to tell you, Joy, that you're just as capable of understanding the world as politicians are? So there's things that you would know that I won't, and there's things that I know that you don't. And so instead of mocking each other, because the key to wisdom is to admit your ignorance, that's philosophy 101. That's the cornerstone of philosophy, to ask the question why and wonder about things. But essentially, when you know what you're ignorant in, then you can study that area and become not ignorant, you know. So there's a difference between stupidity and ignorance. Ignorance just means you didn't come across that information. There's a lot of things that are going in, you know, all throughout the world. He even mentioned there's some word, he had the exact same, you know, sort of issue that had happened. There was a word that meant extreme poverty, and Colossus, and in the newspaper headlines it says, Gary Johnson don't know about the Colossus, and he knew about extreme poverty areas. Okay, so he's already, you know, gone through this entire sort of debacle. Now, the big thing that I want to make a distinction, because Jon Stewart, he also said that he wanted a president that is smarter than him. So I'm not for sure how we're actually measuring smartness. Are we saying that you have more knowledge, or are we saying that you have more intelligence? Because the distinction between knowledge and intelligence is knowledge, and then there's imagination too, but knowledge is just rote memorization. You look at something, you repeat it over and over again, and then it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your brain. And that doesn't, you know, anybody can gain knowledge that way. So I think that knowledge is important. You need to know, you know, about the situation. But I think if we're going to say that somebody is smarter than us, then that's IQ. That's intelligence. And what intelligence is your ability to take apart the issue, to figure it out, you know, to sort of analyze it, to critique it, to figure the thing out, to take it apart, and then to, you know, create something new, to create the solutions. So the intelligence is about your ability to look at the situation or the problem and take it apart and be able to solve it. So it's more of a problem solving type of skill, you know. It's about critical thinking versus just, you know, rote memorization. Anybody can just memorize something, but when it actually comes to intelligence, so if we're talking about IQ and intelligence, that's different than knowledge. And so, you know, he didn't know Aleppo, all right, yeah, he probably should have known Aleppo. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. His overall thing is that he's against the war and we shouldn't have been there. And so if we shouldn't be there, then why would we memorize all the different cities in Syria and all the different regions? Aleppo is like, it's a city, but it's also like a region. I mean, there's like these different, I'm looking at this map here saying the list of cities in Syria, and you got Latakia and Tartus and Hama and Idlib and Homs and Al-Raqqa, Al-Hasaka, Deir ez-Zor, Homs, Damascus, Quin-Itra, Dara, Al-Suwaida. What, you don't know about Al-Suwaida? And those are the regions of Syria, but then you also have all these cities. So I don't know if I mentioned any of these. I might repeat some of them, but there's like a whole, you know, there's a bunch of cities. Qunetra, Raqqa, As-Suwaida, Tartus, Abu Kamal, Afrin, Araha, Ar-Tarib, Ain, Al-Arab, Azaz, Al-Bab, Baniyas, Dereya, Hafer, Duama, Fik. So what do you think about Fik? If you're president, what will you do about Fik? Huh? Mike Barnacle? You Mike Barnacle ditterheads. So then just going down the line, Shaba, Tadmur, Tel Abyad, Taldu, Talkalaka, Yabrud, Zabadani. So what do you know about Zabadani? What do you know about the situation in Zabadani? Huh? You don't know anything about the situation in Zabadani? Well, clearly you don't know just what in the hell you're talking about. And then let's take a look at the situation. So you got Battle of Aleppo. The Battle of Aleppo is an ongoing military confrontation in Aleppo, the largest city in Syria, between Free Syrian Army, Islamic Front, People's Defense Units, and Sunni militants against the Syrian government, Hezbollah, and Shiite militants. That's a lot of actors. There's a lot going on in that one sentence. Free Syrian Army, Islamic Front, People's Defense Units, Sunni militants against Syrian government, Hezbollah, and Shiite militants. So, just with those list of actors there that I just mentioned, and I'm pretty sure that's not all of them, those are the regional actors, right? What about the, you know, who's Turkey with, and China and Russia, right? Everybody's picking their sides here. So, to understand, in this Battle of Aleppo, Wikipedia, so it says it began July 19th, 2012. This has been going on for 4 years. And you don't know about any of these actors? It's still a complicated thing, and I think, unfortunately, because now we got a ceasefire, nobody's going to be paying attention to the region as much as we're looking at it now. And so, well, we're not a part of it, so who cares what's going on in Syria? right? It's like Tanzania or Tanzania, or Nigeria. What's going on in Nigeria? I think we actually do like finance Nigeria, so we're involved in a lot of different countries. But if I was just to pick a country on the map and ask you, what is their deal? Bolivia, right? Pandora was the city that I picked before. What do you think about it? So just picking a random city in the world. The Syrian Civil War is an ongoing multi-sided armed conflict in Syria in which international interventions have taken place. The war grew out of unrest. 2011 Arab Spring escalated to armed conflict after Assad's government violently repressed the protests. There was a thin red line. He gassed his own people with sarin gas, which sarin gas is located right here in the Army Bluegrass Depot. So it's right here in Kentucky. We got sarin gas right here in Kentucky. So we are in violation of we're not gassing our own people, but we made them get rid of all their sarin gas. And here's an article that I just came across, and it was earlier this year, but it says U.S. bombs Aleppo with a question mark. So February 11th, 2016, this is CNN. So Russia accuses the U.S. of bombing Aleppo. They said that they had no Russian warplanes within 12.5 miles. And then yesterday, 2 A-10 attack aircraft of the U.S. Air Force entered Syrian airspace from Turkey, reaching Aleppo by the shortest path, made strikes against objects in the city. So while we're sitting there mocking, Gary Johnson about Aleppo, well, apparently our own government, Obama, right, and John Kerry, and anybody else that's involved, the Secretary of Defense, they're involved in bombing Aleppo. So if we're bombing Aleppo, it's a complicated situation with lots of different moving parts, and ultimately it's about trust. Who do I trust to go in there and make the decision? I'm supposed to just trust, our president. I hope that he's in favor of American interests, but what are American interests? Are they the big bankers and the corporations, or are they the people, or are they the oppressed? Are we liberating the oppressed, or are we defending the oppressors? And so, because Gary Johnson is anti-war, because he's standing up against the military-industrial complex like Jill Stein is, that's a hard position. You're taking on the entire military, industrial complex. That's everybody, right? That's the CIA, that's the Army, that's the Navy, that's the generals, that's the Marines, it's the Coast Guard, it's the National Guard. I probably could list ATF. There's just so many. Who would you consider, FBI maybe, I don't know, but the military-industrial complex. To be against empire, there's 900 military bases, there's Halliburton, there's a lot of Lockheed Martin, a lot of war, gun manufacturers, a lot of money that's being made in empire and in war. So, and Noam Chomsky gives me the indication that our entire society is essentially the military-industrial complex. Everything that we do, everything that we're operating, everything that is going on is based on the war. So the fact that Gary Johnson's against the war, he wouldn't have been in Syria to begin with, and if they said, how's he going to get out? Well, you got to get out, in some sort of orderly, peaceful fashion, so there's not a big vacuum, and so he said diplomatically talk it out with Putin, and guess what Obama did? Exactly what Gary Johnson told, a whole bunch of people, The View and Fox News, Megyn Kelly, and then Neil Cavuto. Neil Cavuto was such a jerk, man. So you're disqualified. No, you made a gaffe. You're disqualified. So you can never ever, do anything again. You made a mistake, and that as a presidential candidate, you can't make mistakes. And that's essentially like Hillary just says that her vote for Iraq war was a mistake. Not that it was a serious foreign policy blunder, that it was the worst foreign policy blunder of the 21st century. So, it's just a power play. Basically, you never admit fault, you never admit any type of wrongdoing, and you act like you're just above the fray, like you could do no wrong. And I want a human. I want a person. I want an actual, person in office that's sort of like a JFK. Yeah, hey, I went into the Bay of Pigs and we lost some Marines and it was a bad plan, and I'm sorry, it's all my fault, and now the buck stops with me. So I'm letting you, the American public, know what's going on. Versus, oh, well, yeah, we did have a corporate coup d'etat in Honduras, but, I don't even feel bad about it. Well, that's a psycho. I don't want a psycho in there. So, okay, we're bombing Aleppo, so that's, we're bombing Aleppo. I would think I'd be more outraged by that. So, Hillary, you're going to be another Obama term, so are you going to bomb Aleppo? And she said, yeah, no-fly zone. So she was all about staying in Syria and continuing bombing. So this would be, you know, a victory for Trump, a victory for Gary Johnson, a victory for Putin and Turkey, a loss for Hillary Clinton, a victory for Obama if the ceasefire holds. And we'll find out on Monday. So Monday is when the ceasefire is going to begin. And that's a good news. The Syrian conflict has gone on for a long time. Nearly 500,000 people have died. And it's, you know, the Syrians, what the hell did the Syrians ever do to anybody? They wanted freedom, and then you have Assad, you got this dictator, and it's a situation. We got lots of dictatorships all throughout the world. What about North Korea? They're just sitting there with nukes and keep on building their army up, you know, stronger and stronger and stronger. And we're worried about these poor nations that don't have nuclear capabilities. And, you know, there's a strong possibility of World War III. If you got a Russian jet, right, you have the Russians were looking at American planes, and there's this one incident where they came really close to flying into each other. What happens then? Russian and American plane collide, you know. Well, was it intentional? Who did it? Who started it? Do we need to declare war on Russia now? Do we need to declare war on another major world power of, you know, part of the UN Council, the Security Council? Now, last point I want to make is this actual interview. So the actual interview is only like 2 minutes, right? So they've been ignoring Gary Johnson and Jill Stein the entire time, and the only time that we cover them is when there's a gaffe. You know, it's Aleppo Gate. I don't even think it's that big of a deal. It's not nearly as much as people are making out to be. Mike Barnacle's a weird, creepy dude. Mike Barnacle stole George Carlin's jokes and then presented it as his own, and then later on denied that he didn't even know George Carlin. He said he got it from one of his friends, and he wrote it on the napkin, and then later on there was proof that he actually recommended Brain Droppings, the George Carlin book, for, you know, people to read. So he lied, you know, when he got caught in his lie, he covered it up with some more lies, and he's had, you know, a bunch of actually debacles in 25 years, you know. If you check out my last video, or my one video about this, he had 25 years of just, you know, controversies. And my take on it was he's a right-wing Republican who's going to vote for Trump, and he sees Gary Johnson as a threat that's going to take votes away from him. He's polling at 12%. If he polls another 3%, then he might actually get into the debates. And there's two ways that I'm looking at this. For one, discrimination against third parties. I won't vote for Gary Johnson. I think that the American people need a fighting chance. And we've just started talking about socialism. It was a cuss word up until last year, and we need to be like Germany. Germany does socialism and capitalism better than us. So we need the mind, you know, and the sort of engine of capitalism, but we also need the heart of socialism. So we need a synthesis of the two. And so I think there's a lot of people in America that don't have a fighting chance. So before I go for an anarcho-capitalist, a laissez-faire free market, wheel 'em and deal 'em, you know, type of, you know, capitalism is dog eat dog. And so my freedom, you cannot separate my freedom from yours, or your freedom from mine, because you can't make a contract with a prisoner, and poverty is a death sentence. So if you're living in poverty, then that means you have to take jobs and you have to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do just to survive, just to live. Well, that's a borderline prisoner of your circumstance. So you're not going into a job because that's your dream and you want to do that, and then you don't quit the job because you need the income in order to pay your bills and to make sure, you know, your wife and kid, or if you're taking care of anybody, or your pets, you know, make sure they all live and survive. So you do a bunch of crap that you don't really want to do. So when I hear about, you know, Tomei Loren or whatever, just leave, just quit. Just if you don't want to do it, then do something else. That isn't an option for a lot of people. So, and when I hear that everybody in America has a fighting chance, which they don't, you have homeless on the streets in every major city, you have police brutality, you have injustice, a criminal justice system, a prison system, a war system, you have a lot of, you know, injustice, and I think that sometimes you can hurt somebody, but if you throw somebody in jail for 10 years, you took 10 years of their life away, and now they have to come out and sort of succeed, and what if they don't have that family support system to actually do well? So I think there's a lot of people in America that slip off, and then where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? I don't think anybody gives a crap. So not just the poor and not just the homeless, but also people who are victims of injustice. And so when I find out that everybody's got a fighting chance, then, you know, if everybody has, like if everybody had a universal basic income, if there was land reform, I think land reform or universal basic income, both of those plans abolish poverty. Poverty is gone. With land reform, people could raise their own crops. With universal basic income, everybody gets a $10,000, $20,000 check, whatever it is, to, you know, basic sustenance so you can live. So Social Security for everybody. If everybody has Social Security, now I don't feel sorry for you. If you're poor and you got a Social Security check, you got $15,000, and you're doped up on heroin and you're not doing anything with your life, well, you had a fighting chance. You had 15 grand. What'd you do with your, you know, universal basic income? What'd you do with your basic, you know, 15 grand? And if you wasted your 15 grand on a bunch of crap, well, then that's, you know, that's your own fault. Then I could say that it's your fault and it's not society or the environment or anything like that. It's your fault. You had 15 grand, invest in, you know, some bike or whatever and get the heck out of your situation and find something that's a little bit better until you keep going until you eventually find what, you know, where you need to be. So if we all have a fighting chance, I would vote for Gary Johnson and say go with the free market. But I think right now that's irresponsible. Free market, it's like David versus Goliath. It's like, how would I, if I wanted to start a big bulk discount store to compete with Walmart without any capital, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose that anarcho-capitalist, you know, sort of cage match, that dog-eat-dog rat race sort of fight. I would lose that fight. So this interview was so quick. At first it says, okay, here's a libertarian, and then they'll pretend like they're talking about something, and then they said, okay, well, you know, you might be a spoiler. They always say that. Well, this might be a spoiler. What do you think about that? And, well, first they ask him, what does he believe in? He's like, oh, I believe what 60% of Americans believe. I'm fiscally conservative. I'm socially inclusive. Skeptical when it comes to military intervention. Skeptical when it comes to going in and supporting regime changes that have not resulted in a more safe world and free markets. So that's what he believes in, right? That's very general and broadly speaking, and he says that he believes that 60% of the people believe the way he does, and the two-party system has absolutely failed. And then, you know, Micah Brzezinski, and I think Micah, she's like a foreign, like her dad was she was like some big foreign policy, I think, for Carter, but the national security advisor. So, you know, she's a daughter of like a powerful official, so I don't even know what really she's accomplished. And they want to sit there and pick on Gary Johnson. Well, what did Donald Trump say about Micah Brzezinski? That she's not that bright. So he called her stupid. Micah Brzezinski, you're stupid. You're not that bright. You're eye candy for Joe Scarborough to make his, you know, business. And that's and also neurotic. And then they said that she's hopping mad and she can't even, you know, pay attention anymore. So, you know, Donald Trump has said way worse things, insulting, and he's bullying, but because he's a bully, then we're just going to let him, you know, I know they said things about him, but I just think that they haven't said that he's disqualified and said, no, we're not going to go with the Republican. And Gary Johnson, to his credit, he has been so chill. He's been so chill. There is, Joy Behar says to his face, I think that disqualifies you, you know I'm going to vote for Hillary, and you're disqualified. So, you know, to hell with you and your campaign and everything you believe. And, you know, I would think Joy Behar would actually be in favor of the legalization of marijuana. Hillary Clinton is not. I don't know about what she thinks when it comes to the intervention with wars. Hillary Clinton loves war. She's never come across a war she hasn't loved. Syria, she was all about a no-fly zone, so she wanted to amp up the military intervention when it comes to Syria. So even on that issue of Aleppo and Syria, I would think that she probably would actually agree on Gary Johnson. So you're going to agree with Gary Johnson with, you know, maybe 50% of his policies, but you're going to treat him like crap because he's not your horse. He's not my horse either. So that's the two perspectives that I want to see, that you're discriminating against third parties because you want to treat them as second-class citizens because they're not one of your two choices. I like Nick Cannon's video. Nick Cannon says, I don't vote for any of this stuff. I need to go out and make some money. What does elections have to do with me? I'm one vote. I'm a drop in the bucket. My vote doesn't matter. So really, and that's genius. That's genius. I'm you know, political science and political savvy. So, you know, I talk about a lot of these things, but I think it gets me in a lot of trouble. If I was just to drop politics and never talk about it ever again, and just say, make money, and, hey, did you see the football game, and just make, you know, stupid, nonsensical, I don't even know if I could do that, but if I just stayed quiet or whatever and just did my own thing, you know, I'd keep my ear to the ground, and I would, you know, try to see what developments have been going on. But I would live a better life, I think, because I'm poor and I'm out here struggling. And since I'm out here struggling and since I'm poor, me speaking about politics isn't a good idea because I'm not speaking from a place of power. Joy Behar, you got money. You know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of celebrities, there's a lot of people that are in a better position than I am. And, you know, I ran for lieutenant governor because I felt like from my inside out that I needed to do something better for humanity. So out of political necessity, out of poverty, we need a better chance, we need a better choice, so we got to do something better. And we're not doing that. But I see a lot of people that's doing way better than that, and they don't feel that same compulsion. It's like y'all been selfish for a long time, and I'm just learning how to be selfish. And so I think that I might actually have a little bit more sanity if I wasn't so political, and I wasn't, you know, but I care about these issues, and I care about my country, and I would like for, I think Jill Stein is the only chance that we got. Okay, so let's see. We're going to go down. It says, they said, which candidate do you take mostly from, Republicans or Democrats? And he says it's 50-50. He says there's some polls that says he takes more away from Hillary, which is kind of shocking to me. I thought that he would take more away from the Republican, but apparently he's taking more from Hillary, which means he'll piss off both Hillary and Donald Trump supporters. So let's carry on. It says, do you worry about the NATO effect in 2000? He's like, I don't worry about it at all. The two-party system is broken, and Democrats can't balance a checkbook, and Republicans have a social agenda, and your social inclinations shouldn't be forced on me. So he thinks that they've gotten too extreme. Now he says, what would you do if you were elected about Aleppo? About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo? You're kidding. No, Aleppo is in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis. It's not the epicenter of the refugee crisis. It's the epicenter of a civil war with about 20 belligerents and 20 different actors. So it's a refugee crisis. You looked at Syria. You looked at Aleppo. You saw that boy with all that hair and the dusted face. You saw that one boy shaking his little baby brother in the baby carriage, all biting his lonesome in an alley. Maybe you haven't seen any of that stuff, but in the hospitals you see that one lady, one little girl who's shaking because she's, you know, had some chemical weapons that was dropped on her, and you're going to look at all that, and to you that was a refugee crisis. That's a war zone. That is a war zone. That is bombs and explosions and guns. Refugee crisis. It's refugee crisis for the reasons outside. It's a refugee crisis for America and Europe. You know, for the other countries. For Aleppo itself, it's the epicenter of a civil war. So Gary Johnson gives this answer. Well, with regard to Syria, I do think it's a mess, and the only way we deal with Syria is to join hands with Russia to diplomatically bring that to an end. Guess what Barack Obama, the president, just did? Exactly what Gary Johnson said that we should do. So are we going to give props? Are we going to hear any of Micah Brzezinski or this Barnacle? Mike Barnacle, they're going to give him some props and say, wow, your actual policy on Syria would have been identical to Barack Obama's. Yeah, you didn't know about one city in the state of, you know, Syria, but you would have had the exact same policy as Obama. Obama says, give it to Putin, right? And so then he says that we're supporting the opposition of the Free Syrian Party. Free Syrian Party is coupled with the Islamists. So, you know, you have to check all this. But then the Kurds, he pointed out that we're supporting the Kurds, and we just kind of walked away from the rebels we were supporting and the Kurds. We walked away from the Kurds in the first Iraq war. The Kurds, give them Kurdistan. I'm so sick and tired of the Kurds having to fight their own battle. You know, Peshmerga is right. And inevitably these regime changes have made a less safe world. So he's against intervention. He's against regime change. And that's sort of what Donald Trump is saying. He's leaning towards isolationism, but I don't believe Donald Trump is an isolationist. I think give him the power. He's talking about he can't wait to nuke people. He's passing nukes out like candy. And you have Gary Johnson. I trust Gary Johnson when it came to matters of war and peace. If Gary Johnson or Jill Stein or Ralph Nader or a lot of these anti-war folks said we need to go to war, I would listen to them because they've been against war for such a long time. Bernie Sanders, they've been against war for such a long time that when they say it's time to go to war, then that's okay. We need to pay attention to what's going on here because they were anti-war for the majority of their life, and now they're saying no, this is a war we need to get into. So then he says, so alliance with Russia is the solution to Syria. Do you really think that Vladimir Putin and Russia are good and reliable partner? He's like, Diplomatico, I think that's just a solution, joining hands with Russia to bring an end to this civil war. So again, he's talking about it's a civil war, not the refugee crisis. It's a civil war. Now, Scarborough, Brzezinski goes, Joe, All right, Joe Scarborough, you want to jump in here? Then he's all highfalutin. Well, you don't even know what Aleppo is. And Aleppo is, so he's totally with Mike Barnacle, right? Stuck up, arrogant, snobby. Does he copy George Carlin jokes too? Is he copying George Carlin jokes and passing them off on his own? I mean, didn't we all get mad about Carlos Mencia for taking people's jokes? And he's a journalist.